Well, I know there's more than this 23 people that accepted the meeting. Okay, time. Looks like people are still joining. I'm just going to give it a few more ticks of the clock as people still are joining. Okay. It looks like the participant number is holding. I was going to say we dropped one. Now we've gained a couple. Give it another tick of the clock here. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. Carbon, my voice coming over okay?
Yes, you sound fine.
Okay, good. All right, we're going to go ahead and start then, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Kaminsky. I am the Director of Product Management for Supply Chain. I also have Greg Hislop. He's the CEO of Biscit. And also Carmen Castro. She is our Product Marketing Manager. Today, we're going to be talking about Epicor Mobile Warehouse. The Epicor Mobile Warehouse is powered by Biscit. Biscit's been established since 2002. They've formed a strong relationship with us and are a certified partner and proud experts in delivering successful Epicor ERP projects in the Australian market and overseas. Biscit, specializes in ERP services to deliver flexible and comprehensible and value-driven business solutions. And because of their accomplishments and partnership with, we have chosen to partner with them on the next generation of the mobile warehouse application. So just a little safe harbor statement, forward-looking, and the Epicor Mobile Warehouse. So the Epicor Mobile Warehouse is the new generation handheld application that offers a modern and intuitive user interface for warehouse and distribution functions. It provides workflow optimization for fast and accurate scanning. It's going to help reduce time to process transactions. It will increase accuracy and reduce errors. The Epicor Mobile Warehouse can be downloaded from the Google Play Store to run on the latest Android devices. Anything running Android 5 or higher. It's fully integrated to Epicor ERP via REST services. So there's no integration to set up. There's only an install and some configuration options. I'm just pausing 1 second. There seems to be that there's some people still on the WebEx call or on the Skype. Carmen, can you send Bill Strong the invite?
Yes, I will send the panelist info.
Okay. Should we wait for those people to come over, or should we just continue?
We're going to get this recorded, so if you just wanted to continue, we can distribute the recording later. Okay. Now just communicate how to log into WebEx.
Okay. So as I was saying, there's no integration. It's fully integrated with REST services. The only thing you'll have to do is there's a couple BAQs and some web op, uh, configurations we have to make, and then the device configurations. The Epicor Mobile Warehouse includes all the existing Epicor handheld screens, plus new features that include, part level validation, bin level validation, configurable scan validation, complex sorting and filtering options, shortcuts. So if you want to, create shortcuts to material queue or certain screens instead of navigating through the menu options, you can do that. And some automated workflows triggered by the scan events. So it is a sleek new interface, and this is just a little tease of what Greg's going to show us here in a couple minutes of the new look and feel of the next generation handheld. So as I said, just to hit home again, it's a modern and intuitive native Android app. Anything running Android 5 or higher, the application will run on. It's simple and it's easy to use, and it's got a great user interface. There's part level and bin level validations. Again, there's configurable scan validations, sorting and filtering options, shortcuts as I just described, and then the automated trigger workflows. So the target market is going to be any existing Epicor handheld user. So anyone that currently has the Epicor handheld data collection license. We are going to run a campaign for those customers that currently own our handheld to get them up and off of the current handheld and onto the Epicor Mobile Warehouse at a discount of 50% for on-premise and 20% off of SaaS until November 16th. So if they currently own the data collection license and the handheld application, they can take take on this discounted price for on-premise or SaaS. Some of the industries that we're looking at targeting are the industrial machinery and fabricated metals, the electronics and the high-tech areas, and the industrial distribution markets. And of course, all the K&A sales. Just a little about licensing and pricing. Epicor Mobile Warehouse will have its own license. It will include the data collection license. So it doesn't need a data collection license, but in the back end, we will provide one for the time being. We will enhance that coming out in the next version. In 500, we're going to have a pool of licenses that the Epicor Mobile Warehouse will pull from instead of using the data collection. But for now, we will provide a data collection license behind the scenes for every Epicor Mobile Warehouse license we sell. The pricing is layered. So the first unit will cost $4,500 for on-prem and $220 for the SaaS users. And then every user after that for 2 to 20 will be $2,400 plus maintenance, and then $199 for SaaS, and so on. This will all be in Aptis and the EQC and on the Epicor price list. Biscit is, Greg is going to add the ability to pull the application off the Google Play Store and install it and run it with a demo licensing opportunity that will run against just the demo databases in Epicor. So demo data, Epicor 03 and Epicor 06 companies, you'll be able to run against those databases without having to license the application. Once you do buy or a sale is completed, we will get a license to that customer. Greg and his team will generate a license, and we'll send that license to that customer, and they'll have a licensed application. We will be working, I just put this out there now, with the 10.2400.4 release, we will have the ability to have the BAQs that need to be installed in part of the seed data. So at that version, going further, no one will need to install the BAQs. They will be part of the base install. The only other thing will be the web config. We are working on the web config changes. I'm not sure it'll make it into that version, but if it does, then at that point, there'll be no installation needed by the customer. The only thing will be to install the app and configure it. There'll be no secondary files to install or configure. The compatibility. So it's going to be released May 16th, GA with 10.2.400. We are going backwards compatible to 10.2.100 and later. Again, it's for any Android device running version 5 or higher. It will be released for US English only. The additional language packs will come mid-summer once we are fully kinetic. The current application is skinned. The style sheets are kinetic, but the entire application is not working on the latest and greatest kinetic framework. We are working on that, and it should be sometime over the summer that's complete. And once that's completed, we'll then be able to pull in some of the language packs. We'll start with Spanish, and then we'll have a prioritized list of the next languages that we'll pull in after that. When this does go GA, our current handheld will go into sustaining mode at that time. So, are there any questions that came up in the chat or anything? If there's any questions, we can talk about them. If not, Carmen, if you want to pass it over to Greg, and we'll get the ball rolling.
I do see questions, or you want to wait to answer those at the end?
We can take questions now real quick.
Okay, so the first one, will this require advanced material management?
Yes, you still have to have advanced material management in order for the application. Just like today, you have to have AMM in order to get the handheld because you're using the material queues and the fulfillment and picking and packing and things like that. So yes.
Okay, another one. Will SaaS still require an on-premise server?
No. It's all integrated with REST services.
Then there's a question about Apple devices. Why iOS is not supported?
So, Greg, do you want to answer that better, or do you want me?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so it's been targeted to Android devices because it's been specifically written for the laser scanning devices. So obviously iOS don't have any laser scanning devices, and you'll see when I get into the app that we've built some code into the scan trigger events of the SDKs of the scan devices. So whilst it will run on any Android device greater than Android 5, we've specifically targeted both Zebra and Honeywell devices, which have the laser scanning devices in them with that code that's been put into the scan engine. So I think we are targeting iOS, but because the whole app has been targeted at the ruggedized iOS device, the ruggedized laser scanning devices for the warehouse and shop floor, that's why it's only been released on Android at the moment.
Okay. Any other questions, Carmen?
No, I think those are the ones that we have for now, and I will pass then the presenter's ball to Greg.
You see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Carmen. Yeah, so just a couple of things to touch on that Mark said. So at the moment, the server install is a couple of changes to the web config and some BAQs. So once the guys add those changes to what Mark referred to as the seed data, it will become a zero footprint install, which means downloading it from the Google Play Store and from a customer's point of view, plugging in a license code and away you go. So on my screen here, so I'm actually doing this demonstration on a device, and then I've just got that device mirrored up to the screen. So just to log in, the first thing it asks for, this is just my standard Epicor username and password. And then I get presented with because I'm just running against a standard Epicor demo image. I see my companies and my plants, and I put my employee ID in. So the first thing I want to do is just go through some of the settings. Oops. So there's some settings under general, and a couple that are worth noting is because the device is typically used in a warehouse, you can set a default warehouse code so that wherever a warehouse field is required, it will default, so you don't have to worry about scanning it. And the other one, I'll turn on the production worker interface, which is just on the home page, some links for from manufacturing jobs. And then the other one is a user-defined character separator for concatenating barcodes together. So typically, job, assembly, operations or materials, and you'll see that later. From a favourites point of view, you notice when I was on the home screen, there was 4 or 5 favourites there. If I navigate into favourites, I can manage those simply by, I can delete them, I can shuffle them around, and I can just hit the plus sign on any of the menu items down the page, and it'll add them to the home page. The other thing while I'm on this screen to note is the words underneath the menu item is the ID for that menu item to allow you to barcode that menu item, so you can actually have a workstation set up if they're only doing one transaction with a barcode at that workstation, and they scan it and it'll take them straight to that menu item. So that those couple of changes I just made to the favourites, if I just navigate back to the home, it's now changed. And there's the production interface that I turned on, which I can turn it on or off depending on whether that's of interest to me. I'm currently clocked in, but I don't have any jobs in my work queue because I'm not clocked in onto any jobs. Moving through the other settings. So one of the challenges for any site that already has Epicor is collecting all of the supplier barcode data for all the parts, putting it into a spreadsheet, uploading it into the system. So we've essentially built a way to do that on the fly. So with this setup barcodes option, I can filter my part list and pull up any part. I'm just going to select the first one in the list here, and I'm just going to scan any barcode. And then against that part, it allows me to specify what unit of measure is that barcode. So I just select a case, and what is the barcode standard? So I'm going to select the UPC 12 and add it, and it's then writing that back up into the part master under the barcode section under the UOM tab of the part master. So essentially it allows you to sort of collect that data as you go rather than having to load it all in through the back end of Epicor. So the next one on the settings list here is a material query. So I'm just I've already got a couple there. Let me create another one. So this is the ability to sort and filter the material queue. So I'm going to create a new query, and I'm going to create one called something like RMA INS, which is one of the doesn't matter what it's called, one of the transaction types. So when I edit that setting, I can go in and put a filter on. So these are all the fields that we can currently filter by. And if I just select transaction type, and I'm going to say I want to filter the list by transaction type, so RMA-INS. I'm going to save that, and I can put a sort on, and I've got the same list of fields to sort by, but in this case I want to sort by material queue ID and descending order. And I can add multiple filters. You're basically just building a where clause and return. Now what that's done is if I go back to my menu, a couple of things. Under this custom material queries menu. It's dynamically created a menu item called RMA ins. If I go back into my favorite settings, I can, and scroll down to that section of the screen, it adds it here. I can't build a barcode for it, but because it's dynamic, but I can add it to my favorite menu. And the other place that it presents itself is if I go into material queues and just call up the main material queue that has everything in it. At the top of the material queue, I have the default query, which is everything. You can't modify the default query. It's all transactions, but if I click on that one, I then get presented with the list of custom queries that I've built, and I can select that, and there's my transactions based on essentially the where clause and sorting. It's sorting by my material queue ID, which is this record here. So that's the sorting and filtering of the material queue. So I guess when you think about that, if I've got Fred, and all Fred does is put away transactions and those RMA INS transactions, I could put them into one query. I could actually call the item Fred's list. I could put it on one of the favourites. And so all Fred does is launch that favourite and just work through the list of items that are sitting on that queue. Back down to settings. And the next 4 or 5 screens, I'm going to go through them all in detail, but by way of example, if I go into receipts, there are configuration options, and underneath receipts, there's settings for PO receipts, container receipts, and company receipts. And just to explain some of them, so the one I've got turned on at the moment requires scan validation. In a receiving scenario where I've raised a PO for a part 123 and a part 124 physically arrives, I can drive this whole application without using a barcode. I can just tap on the screen and navigate it. It's extremely efficient to do that. But there's no guarantee that I've ordered a part 123 and a part 123 has arrived. It might have been a physically different part, looked very similar. I'm the receiving worker. I've gone and put it away, and I only find out later that they've actually sent us the wrong part. Whereas it requires scan validation, forces the user to scan the part to validate that the part that's arrived is the part that's on the PO. Now, in conjunction with that, so the standard behaviour of the application is that as you're scanning the barcodes, it's incrementing the quantity, and you'll see that in a minute when we get into some of the transactions. But I might be a business that deals in very large quantities, so and I might be receiving hundreds of individual items or boxes or something at a time. So I could turn this option on, set quantity to remaining, so that I can, so the system will default the quantity in there, and I don't have to scan everything. But I'm going to force them to scan because of this setting. But then what that's going to do is I've got a quantity of 1,000. I'm forcing them to scan, otherwise it won't allow them to save the record. Then I would turn this option on to say, but I want to prevent the scans from incrementing quantity. So that's just, I guess, one combination of how those settings can be used. While we're on this screen, just to talk about a couple of others, is that the assign part default location. So a PO receipt is typically a 2-step process in Epicor. Take it off the truck, put it on the receiving dock, and then somebody takes it from the receiving dock and puts it into its bin. I can set that at a default level so that it bypasses that second step and it goes from the truck and straight into its put away bin. Now I can do that for all transactions, or I can just initiate that at a transaction level, because typically I might want to put it to the receiving dock, but then I get a really small shipment or a courier to deliver something. I want to put it straight in the bin. Then I can just set it for the individual transaction. And then there's a couple of other settings. I can hide warnings. They get pushed out of Epicor, and default print options, and then similar options for the others. So without going through all of those other screens, there's similar screens on the outbound process. There's a couple of additional ones here. I want the system to pre-fill the PCID until I change it when I'm doing transactions, so I haven't got to set it every time. I want to prevent overshipping. etc., etc. So there's various settings on each of those forms. So to go in and have a look at some of the trackers, or in fact just one or two. When we were saying about the, I was saying earlier about the scan trigger events, a good way to demonstrate that is the lot tracker. It's just a really simple form. It's got two fields. Now, for those of you that have had any experience with the old one, this little icon here is the ability to call up a list of whatever you're searching for, list of parts in that case, which is quite helpful. But in terms of that scan trigger automation, if I scan a barcode, you'll notice that it scanned it, it validated it's the correct item, and it's then automatically navigated to the next step in the process. So then, I scan a lot number, and so in order to arrive at the data for this particular tracker, I didn't have to interact with the application at all. I did nothing but scan those two appropriate barcodes. And obviously each step of that way, it's doing that validation as well. So while I'm in here, I can see that we've got 187 items in the main warehouse and one in an inspection bin. I can tap on any of those items and see more information about it. And I can also, with this little eye up here, I can navigate into there and see more information about the lot itself. Now, I was inquiring for a particular part and a particular lot of that part, but it might have turned out that I was actually looking for I thought I had 200 of them. I've only got 187. So on the part number field, you can see the arrow here indicates there's another screen below there. And typically, or it was originally implemented for extended descriptions, and because building a mobile app is a lot about managing the real estate, the small amount of real estate that you've got. So the ability to open up the record and get the additional information. But what we've now done with that is if I open that, here's my big box if it was a big long part description, but I can now say view part, and it's essentially drill down capability. So what it's now showing me is it's launched the part tracker with that part in context, but not the lot. So it's effectively showing me all of the part quantities that we've got in stock, irrespective of lot. Now, if I then take one of those, like the 187 that I was looking at originally, and open that, and I can see that that's in this bin, I can then launch that bin, hit the view bin button, and I'm now seeing all of the parts that are actually stored in that bin if I was a business that had multiple parts in a bin. And you'll notice that each step of these the way I've got this little icon, so I can actually find out information about the bin itself as well. So I'll just back out of that now. So that's essentially sort of drill down functionality. Across the application, we've used the concept of tabs here. So this is my current tab. If I wanted to go back, I can just hit the first tab here. It asks me to confirm it, and I'm ready to scan the next one in. The other thing is, there's trackers there that weren't in the old handheld. There's 3 or 4 extra ones there that we've added. I'm not going to go through them all. From a transaction log point of view, I can specify I want to look at all the transactions for the last 9 days. I could have just typed in 9 days. It retrieves my transactions, and you would have seen on some of the other screens the ability to filter. So even though I'm looking at all the transactions that have gone in and out of the system in the last 9 days, I can just start typing up here, and now I'm looking at just the keyboard part and what all of its transactions for the last 9 days. So that sort of filter functionality exists across the application. Moving on to receiving. So these are all the different menus underneath the receiving menu, which we're going to go into a couple of them, but let's just do a standard PO receipt. So here's I can tap on the little icon over the side here and get a list of all of my open POs at the moment. I could, if I had a PO number that was barcoded, I could scan it in, I can key it in, or I can also do a PO number search by part. And what that allows me to do is just turn up the right barcode here. I can scan a part and it shows me all the open POs that part's on. So I can load that PO. Again, I could scan a pack slip if the supplier happened to send me a barcoded pack slip number. I can add it to an existing pack slip. I can actually generate a new one. But in most cases, people are probably just going to receive a pack slip number with the goods. So we're just going to receive that. And now here's the 3 items on that particular PO. You'll notice the first couple of items are a quantity of 100. So even though we ordered 100 eaches, the supplier might have sent us 2 cases of 48 and 4 eaches to make that 100. So I'm just going to scan one barcode, which happened to be a case of 48, scan the next barcode and the 4 eaches that came with that item, and save it. And now I only have 2 lines left on that PO. The next item we ordered 100 was the same. They actually sent us 2 cases of 48 and 4 eaches. Oh, now before I save that, just to talk about this screen, so that scanning ability is incrementing this quantity as we're going along. I haven't got my scan validate turned on, so I could actually process that manually. Otherwise, there'd be a tick box here, and it wouldn't allow me to save unless I had scanned it. You can see my default bin is my receiving bin, but if this was damaged, I can push it into my inspection bin. I can print my tags and look at my PO comments. I can also print my barcode labels from the device. If I've got one default report style and one default printer assigned to that report style, when I save this transaction, it won't prompt me to select the printer and select the report style. It just pushes it straight through. I'll leave that off for now. And I can generate my PCID. So we'll go in there. I'll just turn that printing off and select my package code and say generate. And it's generated my PCID and assigned it to that transaction. So we'll save that one now. Now the last item that's on my PO is a serial number item. So I'm going to scan the item that I received, which I got 2 of them. And now because it's a serial tracked item, I go into my serial numbers and scan. So it's telling me here I've currently got none of 2 of the 2 that I require. So I'm going to scan one. So I've made it 1 of 2, and as soon as I get to the required quantity of 2 of 2, it automatically navigates me back to the page. Now there's one of the configuration settings that will change the way that works, and that is that I might be a business like I've just done there, and I might receive quantity of 10, and I want to put the quantity of 10 in, and then I want to run down a list of serial numbers, which is essentially what I did there. But other businesses might get items that have both the part code and the serial number on the same box, and so they want to scan the part, the serial, the part, the serial, the part, the serial for the 3 boxes they've got. If I change the configuration option, it will navigate through these screens, from this screen receiving the quantity into the serial screen and back to this screen to receive the next quantity without touching anything other than the trigger handle. And again, that's some of that automation, that the user doesn't need to interact with the device. It's I guess preempting what the next scan is going to be at that spot, ready to accept that scan. So I'm just going to put my quantity in there. I'm just going to save that. So the other one there is that set to the default location. So whilst my bin number is currently my receiving bin, if I wanted to override that and bypass that second step put away just at a transaction level, I can select that option that sets it to my default bin. I could actually back out that default bin and scan it into a different bin. So long as it was valid, it does do the validation. So the bin would have to be valid in the plant that I'm working in, those sort of things, or I can't just enter any number in. And we save it. So that PO is now closed. So that's the PO receiving process. So the next one I wanted to do was the outbound pick, pack, ship process. So even though the picking is the lines on a sales order that are being released for picking are sitting in the material queue, we've kind of managed that separately. So underneath material queue, I'm just going to go to my outbound orders because they've been assigned to me. And this is the list of orders that have been released for picking and assigned to me. So I'm just going to grab the next one that needs to be picked. And here's I'm just using the same 3 items. But this is the pick slip, the traditional printed pick slip. It's sitting there on the device. It's telling me what items I've got, what my quantity is, what the bin that I've got to get it from, what the order number is for the 3 lines of this order. So I'm now going to scan. So I'm going to walk to that bin location and scan a part. And if I scan the right part, it'll open it. And then I can either enter the quantity or I can use the scanner to scan the quantity in, depending on, or I could have it defaulted so that the system puts the quantity in there. And then I simply save that record. I've now got 2 items left for this order to pick. So I'm going to grab the next one. And again, I'll just use the scanning to set the quantity. And then we'll save it. And the last one is a serial tracked item. Actually, before that's okay. I'm going to put the quantity in. And now, instead of scanning serial numbers, I can launch the serial number form. It's exactly the same form as we saw on the inbound. And I can scan into this just the same way as I can on the inbound. But this time, because the serial numbers are in the system, I'm just going to use the browse button, grab my next 2 serial numbers, hit select, and save. Now, it then asks me, if I rephrase this statement, am I the person that's going to continue with the transaction, yes or no? If I say no, it's going to pack the transaction up and I move on to whatever I'm doing next, as you would expect. But if I say yes, if I am the person, I've just picked it, if I'm the person that potentially is going to pack it and or ship it, I can say yes. And what it does is it just pushes me through to the basically creating the pack slip in it. What this is doing is creating the pack slip in Epicor. Even at this point, it's making some assumptions. I can do this scanning, or I can just do it on the basis that I can tap any one of those lines and all 3 lines highlight, because it's assuming I'm going to put all those lines onto one pack slip. If I didn't want to, I can unselect any line like that bottom one because I want to put it on its own pack slip. I can do that from the menu as well, select and deselect, but now I say process, and I essentially get presented with the same question again. Am I the person who's going to do the next step? Yes or no? I'm going to say yes. And when you think about what we've just done there, we didn't have to close those down. We didn't have to navigate the menu. We didn't have to retrieve the record. It just pushed us through that workflow. Now at this point, I can go in and I can do a number of things in here. I can scan in tracking numbers. I can put in package codes. Just go back to this tab here. I can print the shipping labels and pack slips, or I can just simply ship it because I don't need to do any of those in this particular scenario. Now, if that order is a auto invoice flagged as an auto invoice order, that order is what we've just done there is we've picked, packed, shipped, invoiced, and if I've got my advanced print routing turned on, we've sent the invoice to the customer. Without me waffling on about it, 3-line order with a couple of serial numbers, in about 30 to 40 seconds, the whole process start to end. So that's essentially the outbound process. Just conscious of time, so I'll keep going. From a job and sort of labour point of view, we're going to go in and issue some materials to a job. Let me just grab the right barcodes. So in this issue material option, I can scan a job number. Is it the right job number? Yep. I'll look at the data. I can now scan, I've only got one assembly, default assembly, scan my assembly, scan my material item that I want to pick. I'm now standing in the store and I'm going to grab 2 of those transactions and we save it. And there's my required to, issued to, and completed. There was 3 or 4 scans there. to navigate through the job, the assembly, the material. So the second item I'm going to do a different way. If I scroll down here, we've got one called ID issue material, which I think of as a unique ID to issue the material. And the unique ID being one scan takes me straight to the material. And that's because I'm utilising that user-defined character separator we saw up front, where I've concatenated the job, the assembly, and the material number together. Then I'm scanning the part. Again, I could be entering these quantities on that field manually and saving it. So that's the other way to issue material. What I would now want to do is log into labour, and I can launch this from the home screen. But in fact, let me just go back there, because if I go back to the home menu, I want to, or actually I'll do it from here. Yes, I'll do the second one a different way. I can say from the home screen, start activity. What sort of activity do you want to start? I want to start production. And now it's asking me for my job, assembly, and my operation number. So I can scan my job, my assembly, my operation. I'm not navigating on the screen at all. It's just moving me through those fields as I scan them. And I'm going to hit the save button. So I'm now logged on to that job. Do I want to view the work queue? I'm going to say yes, because I know there's something in it. I go away, I do the job, and then I come back. When I come back, I tap this. Because of a couple of other configuration options that we've got, I've pre-filled in my completed quantity, which is just defaulting from my job. I've automatically completed my request move because it's got to move to the next operation. And so to clock off it, I just need to check the information and save it. I can turn those options off to force the user to enter them. Do I want to continue? Yes, I know I'm efficient. I did it less than I expected. Yes, I want to continue. I don't want to view the work queue because there's nothing in it. But what that's now done is it's created an operation move request in the material queue. So if I navigate to my custom material queries, I've got this MFG opera line, and I can go in here and see the material queue. And here's our job 2443, basically asking us to move that material from work cell 1 to work cell 2. It's got a green tick against it because it's automatically been allocated to the employee I'm logged into. So I could have gone into my material queue to find it, which is what I'm going to navigate to here down the bottom. These are just the things that are allocated to me, and I'm going to process the fact that I've just moved to. I can do this by scanning. As you can see, it's the same screen that we've been using, but I've just moved those two items from that work cell 1 to that work cell 2. Now I'm going to, now that material is moved, I need to do my second operation. So from my home menu, I've got to log on to that start production as well. But from here, I just hit the wrong barcode. If I scan the right barcode, that's just that menu items being barcoded. So I read a barcode and it took me straight to start production. Now, similar to what we did with the material, the first time around we scanned the 3 separate fields, job, assembly, and operation. This time I've got them concatenated into one barcode. So I scan it, all 3 fill in, it retrieves the record, and I hit save. Yes, I want to view the work queue. I go away and work on the job, and I come back, and it doesn't have a next move, next operation, because it's the final operation on my job. And I save it. Yes, I know I'm efficient. I'll say yes. And no, I don't want to view my work queue because there's nothing in it. And the last step, because I did my job for stock, is that I can go in here and do a job receipt to inventory. I can navigate all these screens pretty simply without barcodes as well. So just to demonstrate that my job was 2443, I can call it up in the list and use the search criteria. Yep, that's my job. That's the assembly I want to complete. And I can scan them in or I can enter them. I'm putting 2 jobs the 2 items into stock. That's what we completed. And that's that process done now. The other couple of things on here under inventory, standard inventory adjustments, moves, cycle counts. Just to show you, I won't do them all. One of those screens. Let's turn up the right barcodes here for a adjust inventory. So I scan my part. I can scan my quantity or enter my quantity. So I'm going to say I want to do 2. When I accept that, it says, are you incrementing or decrementing stock? I'm adding to stock. I can look at my reason codes. I'm adding a new part as my reason code. I'm putting it in the default bin, otherwise I could scan a different bin, and I save it, and the adjustment's done. So the other screens are similar. I guess the only other couple of things that I wanted to show you, and that is, if we go down to settings, and in my general settings, this top option here for the camera, if I turn that on, whilst these have been designed for the laser scanners, it will run on any Android smartphone, and it is quite efficient, even without using barcodes, just to navigate through that whole process. If I now go back into something simple like the lot tracker, and just get to the right barcodes here, previously, and this will still work, I can scan straight into that field while it's sitting there, but I can initiate the camera just by tapping on the active tab if I've got that camera mode turned on. So if I was to tap on this tab here, it calls up the barcode, the camera, and reads the value in. Okay, we've got caught, but let me just do that again. Take the camera, and this is the one I actually want. Reads it in and moves to the next field. So nowhere near as efficient as just zap zap, because with the scanner, this lot tracker with simple form with 2 fields literally is as quick as you can hit the scan trigger. It's published the results. So a little bit more slow and tedious to use the camera, but it will work with cameras as well. Yeah, I think that was pretty much all I wanted to cover, and I wanted to finish a little early so that we had some time for some questions. So, Mark, you're still there?
I am here. Did you talk about how you optimized it for the Honeywell and Zebra handhelds with the
Yeah, I did earlier. So whilst it will run on any Android phone, yeah, it's been, I think Honeywell and Zebra own something like 80 or 90% of the world market in that space. They don't release a product in their mobility range, either of them these days, that isn't Android based. And at the moment, there's a good sort of dozen options for them. But as I said, it will run on a phone. The only requirement is Android 5 and up. There's some issues with some of the older Android assemblies that they're that old now that we're not interested in going back and resolving. Hence the Android 5. But yeah, it's a lot of that scan trigger automation is built into those the SDKs of those the actual scan engines. So yeah, that's kind of the preference.
So a question that I did see come up, it was asked, does it have a pick routing feature or for efficient picking?
Yeah. So we're working on that at the moment. At the moment, the 3 items that you saw on the pick list, we are adding the same level of functionality that we have on the material queue to allow you to build a sort and dynamically set it on that screen to whatever, essentially whatever sort routing you want based on the options that are available. So that same concept of filtering and sorting the material queue will apply to the sales or pick list.
Okay. Carmen, do you see any other questions?
No, I just saw an additional. Let me see. Can you scan with a device camera, or do you require a barcode scanner?
Yeah. So he just showed that you can use the camera on the device. It's not optimal, but you can use the camera on the device to do scanning.
As opposed to laser scanning. Yeah.
Right. Anything else? I don't see anything on my side that doesn't seem to be scrolling. Right. Oh, there it goes.
Just a reminder that we'll have the recording available on Epic Web, so you can watch it later.
So the question is, how will we customize screens? Can we read UD fields? How is printing connected?
Printing is just submitting jobs to the task agent, same as the Epicor client via the REST APIs. And what was the first question? Oh, the UD field. So we're working on upgrading it to the Kinetic framework, as Mark described up front. And ultimately, the Kinetic framework is going to allow for customizations and personalizations. So we were a little reticent to add all of that ability into the app itself when the framework will ultimately be delivering that, with the view that we'd only have to kind of unpick it once the framework does deliver that. Having said that, we are currently working on an ability to identify the UD fields that are available for a form and allow you to select them, and it will then add them to predefined locations at the bottom of that form to allow you to collect data into those UD fields. So it's kind of a bit of a middle ground that we're looking at, that we're working on at the moment, ahead of the Kinetic framework actually being able to deliver sort of personalizations and customizations.
Okay. There was another question. Since this is Kinetic based, is it not available on any device through web browser?
At the moment, it's being compiled for APKs for Android only. So, as I said earlier, we are planning on releasing it to iOS. One of the challenges running it on a web browser is that there's no way to scan a value into a field when you're inside a web browser. So again, it comes back to what we were trying to achieve when we built it in the first place, which was specifically targeting it to the laser scanning devices that are running Android.
Okay. I don't see anything outstanding question-wise. Carmen, do you have anything else you see other than we?
No.
No, one just popped in. I think this next one's for you, about literature.
Yeah, yeah, we'll make that available on Epic Web. We'll have a fact sheet. We'll have a cue card. We'll include there all the links to the trainings that we have done, demos, etc. So you have complete information on the product. Then I saw another one. Give me one
So
second.
did I don't know where it went.
What are typical hardware costs you see?
From my point of view, the whole range. In US dollars, I believe that the sort of lower end of both the Honeywell and Zebra market, I think they're typically a CT40 in the Honeywell market and a TC50 or 51 or something like that. I think the model is in the Zebra market. I believe they're both sub $1,000 for the device itself. And obviously then I think they both come with trigger handle options, and then obviously there's charges and things like that. But the device itself is starting at those sort of prices, and then right up to the larger units that are I'm not sure of the numbers, but two to 3,000 for the top end of town in that space.
All right. So, will there be a demo for prospects recorded that will make this easy to share? We're not planning on doing that. There are emulators that you can get to run this on the PC, but if you have a demo mode device to run the application on would be the best. Greg, what's your experience when you've been demoing it for your prospects up to this point?
Yeah, so I've been demoing it on physical devices, and then because I've been doing a lot of demos remotely, just like we've done now, mirroring that up to the screen. So it works very well. There are emulators. There's Android emulators out there that you can install on a Windows PC. I've had to play with one or two of them. The one or two, they weren't great just in terms of the way they resolved or set the screen resolution and what your options were in that respect. But I know that they're looking at running it on an emulator on the 400 image that the guys are working on. So it'll be demonstratable from that image as well. So that's probably the best option.
Yeah, and there was a question, when will it be available on the sales image? They are working on it. They're working on getting it in there. It'll probably be on there when they release the sales image. And I would have to ask Brad when they're going to release that image, but it will be on the sales image when it gets released. 400.
I think it's probably also important to note that the look and feel will slightly change as the icons become Epicorified, if that's the word.
Yeah, it's a good word.
Skin changes, a couple of skin changes like that. That are happening in the next couple of days.
Any more questions?
It says, will you include device recommendations with the literature? Yes, we can include a list of devices that are supported from Zebra and Honeywell.
We're also working with those organisations to actually get certification, which gives us a little to give us the list of certified products. I mean, they already are, but we're just working with them to get the official stamp.
Great, we hear you like very far.
Okay. I was just saying we're working with Honeywell and Zebra to get the certification stamp for them, so it's a little clearer as to which products it's certified on. So we're moving with that as well at the moment. So essentially, any of the Android 5 or later devices out of those two entities.
Okay, I think that's it.
All right.
We're right on time.
Perfect.
Well, thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks, Carmen. And happy selling, everyone.